Hey, what's up, guys? I just want to let you guys know there's something possibly prophetic happening possibly next year if a Republican president is elected. You guys need to hear this, and then after this video is over, I'm going to go over some things as well.
Everyone here, this is the movement. We are going to be prepared day one, January 20, 2025, to hit the ground running as conservatives to really help the next president. Heritage got on the marker as an organization by delivering the first mandate for leadership in 1980 to President-elect Reagan. We also, over time, gave a lot of resumes in, but when Dr. Roberts came aboard, he said, this task in 2024 is too big for any one think tank. This has to be a movement. And what we've done is use our convening power here at Heritage to bring the entire movement together. So 2025 is not a Heritage thing, it's a conservative movement thing. We're going to explain briefly here, we're going to have a panel, and we'll have a video, but what we're doing is systematically preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state. So if you would, join me in watching the video and inviting our fellow panelists here, Ed, Rick, and Ken Cuccinelli over, so we'll cue the video and have a little discussion. What is Project 2025? It's a call for you to come work here, Washington, D.C.
Conservatives face a tough challenge in Washington, the swamp. The left has built a system that blocks and sabotages our efforts to run our government and deliver a conservative agenda.
People will come into the government on behalf of a president and not be bought into the agenda that he was elected to do. They were either uncommitted or incompetent.
Things aren't going to change unless you commit to serving our country.
We want to make sure that the plans that are in place have been vetted so that the person knows not only what argument and excuses come in their way, but what the answer is, and have the trust of a movement-wide effort led by the Heritage Foundation to make sure that they know that it's credible and it's conservative.
This time, we have a secret weapon. This time, we have Project 2025. By learning from the experience of former conservative appointees, we can overcome common obstacles and get things done.
The reason I got involved is because I want to be part of a movement-led effort, and Heritage Foundation has used their influence to be able to convene the movement.
We can be ready to hit the ground running on day one of the next administration. In the wise words of Morton Blackwell, you owe it to your philosophy to study how to win. Project 2025 will ensure a conservative agenda is ready to roll on day number one.
Make sure that we, as conservatives, are prepared to hit the ground running January 20th, 2025. To learn more, go to project2025.org. Great. Well, let me explain briefly how we structured Project. Thank you. Let me give you a little overview how we've structured this, and then pass the mic over to Rick Dearborn to give you a little bit of overview from his viewpoint as Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House and running the last transition. We have 4 pillars we speak of, and this is an integrated approach. First, as you know, today we came out with our policy book, Mandate for Leadership. This sets the table for what conservatives want in their next standard bearer. We are bringing this out before the primaries to bring the candidates to our point of view. And we're standing at the ready to train them up and give them policy expertise. But this is a great sampling across our 50-plus member coalition of what conservatives in the main want to see in the next 4 years. 2, we're making a massive database, conjoining all of our personal recommendations into essentially a conservative LinkedIn. This is for anyone in America to enter into government here in Washington. This place is only going to change when we take people in from outside of the Beltway. Anyone who's listening to this, who's ever aspired to come serve, this is your call to do it now. join the database, create your profile, and then 2, we shift into pillar 3. It's our online training. It's going to teach you the rules of the road. How do you function in government? How does government function? We're going to teach you the more mundane things about how to get a security clearance, but we're going to tell you how to work effectively with a career staff, how the budget processing work, the budget process works, and all these other intricacies of federal government life that you can't learn on the job. And then finally, we're going to be doing the playbook. This is our plan of action for the first 180 days. We're doing transition teams. Rick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience on the last transition and how this project will make it different?
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. So, Rick Dearborn, I'm the former Deputy Chief of Staff for President Trump in the White House. But before that, and right after he won election in 2016, 3 days later, I was tapped to be the Executive Director of a presidential transition. I think James Baker is the only person that's been on a transition 5 times. I think you ran one 3 times. Normally, when you do it, it's your first time doing it. I love doing it. I don't know that I want to do it again. But the peaceful transition of power is an awesome responsibility.
Mind you, when Joe Biden was elected, there was no peaceful transition of power. There was sheer bedlam on January 6th, 2021.
I would have given my right arm to have had the book that I see on so many tables out there, to have this mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. I would have been able to go to our agency,
More like a conservative manifesto.
the action team, and put the book down and say, hey, here's what you should take a look at when you're going to build out how to run EPA or the Department of Justice or DOD. The 4th pillar that you talked about, Paul, the idea that there's a battle plan, plans, executive orders, how do you write those? What rules are important? What should you focus on? What can you anticipate that Congress may want to reverse or advance? What should your priorities be for the administration? All of that will be part of this project that we provide the next conservative president. So I'm ecstatic about it. I wish I'd had at least this first piece, the book. And I'm happy actually to turn it over to Deputy Secretary at Homeland Security and former Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli to tell you a little bit more about what is in this book and how important it is.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I did serve in the Department of Homeland Security, and that's the chapter that the title in the book is lead author, but the reality is in DHS, and you'll hear this from other chapter leads as well, over 30 people contributed to writing this chapter. It covers the entire waterfront of the department, which is 250,000 employees, over $50 billion budget. There's a lot of ground covered under the banner of the Department of Homeland Security. And so some of the names you'll know: Mark Morgan, Tom Homan, Joe Edlow, who followed me in USCIS. Some of the others you wouldn't recognize. Some from the legislative perspective, because some of what we look to do here is lead the way and have urge a president to lead the way in changing the law, not just issuing executive orders, but permanent changes to how American government works to better serve the American national interest and the American people. And all of those inputs are incorporated. We don't agree on everything all the time. You may have noticed that here or there in the conservative movement, but we reflect alternative options, and DHS is a good example of this. We start out with a primary recommendation, which may surprise some of you, and that is to get rid of the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, they want to gut the Department of Homeland Security. Like, do away with it. I mean, hell, they want to do away with the entire administrative state.
Well, maybe it doesn't surprise that many of you. But we also play the probabilities. Before I went to the dark side, I went to law school. I was an engineer. I tried to stay in touch with the numbers. And we think the odds of that, I don't want to bet on them, but we also worked, well, what if it doesn't get broken down? And by that, we don't mean get rid of the missions. We mean better manage from a national standpoint how American security is protected, how American responsiveness is protected. You think of FEMA, for instance. And we go through them agency by agency as well, including some of the things we think we should be rid of, like the TSA. It should be
the Transportation Safety Administration. They want to get rid of that too. Well, so much for roads and bridges, and so much for safe planes to fly in. You'll have planes fucking crashing at every fucking turn if they do that.
It isn't that there shouldn't be security, but government doesn't need to run that. Just by way of example, and that's not new to the conservative movement, but I think it is new to a lot of America. And we lay out the groundwork for how an incoming team, as you heard Rick describe, could begin executing on that goal on day one. And so, like many of the other chapters, lots of people involved in writing the Department of Homeland Security chapter, very proud of that work product. And I think that when you add in the personnel piece and the training, you're going to hear about more from Ed in Pillars 2 and 3. This really would tee up an incoming administration to achieve more than we've ever seen under a conservative president before, which is exactly what we want to tee up the next conservative president to do. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan. I guess I should have mentioned
that's illegal, unethical, and unconstitutional. It takes an act of Congress to get rid of the TSA. It takes an act of Congress to get rid of the DHS. Congress ain't going to get rid of the TSA or the DHS.
I'm at Center for Renewing America these days, which is set up by Russ Vogt, who you saw in this video here. He's former OMB. Obviously, I was at DHS. And that's kind of where I hang my think tank hat. And I can attest to to use Ed's word from earlier today, the ecumenical nature across the conservative movement of this whole effort. And that only makes it stronger, really does. It's a very powerful way to see a bunch of individualists and organizations that value individual liberty set aside their own interests to work just purely on behalf of good conservative policy has produced a really outstanding product. And I'll hand it over to Ed Corrigan.
So I'm Ed Corrigan. I'm the president of the Conservative Partnership Institute. Really proud to be a part of this project. So many of you are focused rightly every 2 years on electing the right people, and so much of your time and energy and resources are put toward that effort. But so often we ignore what happens the day after you win it. And that's what this project is all about, because that's so, particularly with the presidency, it's so important. And basically you're going to get a chance to flip through the policy recommendations, having all of that. Rick and I were up in Trump Tower in the winter of 2016 I was working on the personnel project. Rick was running the whole operation. It's just so important. Getting the right people, and that's what we've been focused on, is the personnel database is going to be robust. It's going to provide strong recommendations, and in addition, we're going to have elaborate training programs for folks who want to come in and want to serve, and giving them the recommendations, the toolkit, and how to navigate it, and from people who have done it before and have been successful at it. So I just want to say, as Ken, you're going to hear a lot of folks say, it would be for the most powerful think tank in America, it would be very easy to go alone on a project like this. That's not what happened here. Under the leadership of Kevin Roberts and Paul Dans and Spencer and Steve Groves and others, this has been really a team effort. You got 50 different conservative organizations that contributed to this. That's what makes this a strong product. No presidential campaign or president is going to be able to ignore it. This is going to give them the tools to really be successful, and so really grateful.
The next incoming president needs to ignore this shit. He needs to. He needs to take that Project 2025, our mandate for leadership, and throw it in the trash.
Proud of the team for what they've done on this. Yes, and thank you, Ed, for that remark. I would say, this has never happened in our movement. We've never had this coming together of the entire movement to prepare for one event, day one, January 20th. And what brings all these organizations together? Our common theme is to take down the administrative state, the bureaucracy, and you're going to.
Yes, they want to gut the administrative state, folks. And what's part of the administrative state? Social Security, food stamps, TSA, a lot of other bureaucratic organizations. They cannot do any of this, what they're talking about. They need an act of Congress. And according to Mike Johnson, or MAGA Mike today, that they plan on getting the biggest conservative majority in the Senate and the House in history. Let's hope and pray that doesn't happen. Because this conservative LinkedIn, they're going to be flooding the federal government with nothing but Christian conservative sycophants.
Yeah, it's not as easy done as it is said. The bottom line is that we need to have an army of conservatives ready to march in day one, and they don't even know who they are yet. They're hoping that we're gonna get the word of Project 2025. They're gonna come from all 50 states and come here to Washington, and they're gonna be equipped because of how we're training them and giving them the battle plan.
Is our presidential person.
Okay, enough of that sycophantic bullcrap. Both Republican and Democratic parties are making their pitch to voters as the 2024 presidential elections draw near. Notably, back in April of 2023, multiple conservative organizations led by the Heritage Foundation created a policy guide called Project 2025 of the Presidential Transition Project. Project 2025 its primary goal is to help provide policy guidance for the next Republican president. If one of the current Republican candidates were to win office, to that end, this coalition of conservative organizations published a book titled Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise. This massive document is 920 pages. Outlines the policies these conservative organizations recommend. This book covers a variety of policy guidance for topics like climate change, immigration, LGBT rights. As noted on its website, over 50 conservative groups came together, or organizations, for this project. Additionally, multiple authors penned different chapters, as like what the gentleman in the video said. Of the conservative organizations are notable anti-LGBT groups, including the Heritage Foundation, the Family Research Council, and Moms for Liberty. Multiple LGBT organizations and individuals have spoken up against this document since it was released. These groups have cited both the anti-LGBT policies laid out along with dehumanizing language as the basis for the criticism. For example, in just the forward section of the book alone, Kevin Roberts writes, "Children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries." They're never talking about transgender people as people, or gay people as people, or lesbian people as people. It's always referring to them as an ideology or some kind of ism, said Sasha Buchert, the director of the Non-Binary and Transgender Rights Project for Lambda Legal, as quoted in The Guardian. One passage likens the existence of trans people as pornographic. The passage reads, "Pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children. It also compares trans and non-binary people along with their allies as child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women." Another passage in the forward section reads, "Pornography should be outlawed and the people who produce it and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classified as registered sex offenders. And telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate it spread should be shuttered." As Dame magazine reports, the implication of linking both pornography and the mere existence of trans people together is to try to eliminate any and all LGBT content such as books and other media and make it harder to live as a trans person. When they talk about pornography, this includes any content discussing or portraying LGBT figures from children's books I Am Jazz and Tango Makes Three to the Trevor Project Suicide Hotline, writes Bryn Tannehill for Dame Magazine. "We know that by looking at how the Don't Say Gay bill is permeated in Florida, or implemented in Florida. This literally is their model. Along with the rhetoric like this document also outlines additional policy guidance, including but not limited to stripping anti-discrimination protections from all people who are LGBT, banning trans and non-binary people from serving in the military, which they can't do, withdrawing Ryan White HIV/AIDS guidance on using its program funds to help cover gender-affirming care." Some of the document's authors are well known to be anti-LGBT by a wide variety of LGBT organizations. For example, one of the authors is Roger Savino, who the Human Rights Campaign described as a radical anti-LGBT activist. He once led the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights. Servino wrote in Chapter 14 that the next Republican president should direct HHS to maintain a biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family, which means they want to lift protections for same-sex marriage. The passage would suggest emphasizing heterosexual marriages over that of same-sex marriage. In addition, Jonathan Berry, in Chapter 18, recommends the president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. Conservatives often frame their policy crusades as part of an effort to expand religious freedom, a narrative deployed across the Trump administration to get civil rights protections, wrote progressive Christian activist Guthrie Graves Fitzsimmons in an op-ed piece for MSNBC. But no Project 2025 is saying the quiet part out loud. Right-wing groups do not want to ensure all Americans but want to impose conservative Christian views on our religiously diverse country. Project 2025 is intended to be used by any Republican presidential candidate if one succeeds at winning the White House, which we should try to stop. Project 2025 is providing a blueprint for any Republican administration, wrote Graves Fitzsimmons. It's important to remember that the blueprint serves as a policy guide and that the election is almost a year away. And always remember, folks, knowledge is power. Now I'm going to read an excerpt or two, not the whole damn thing, from this ghastly freaking piece of shit manifesto. Furthermore, the next conservative president must understand that the using government alone to respond to symptoms of family crisis is a dead end. Federal powers must instead be wielded to reverse the crisis and rescue American kids from familial breakdown. The conservative promise includes dozens of specific policies. Some are obvious and long-standing goals, like eliminating marriage penalties in federal welfare programs and the tax code, and installing work requirements for food stamps, which they've already done. But we must go further. It's time for policymakers to elevate family authority, formation, and cohesion as their top priority, and even use government power, including through the tax code, to restore the American family. Yet they want to bring back the nuclear family. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Today the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent. The next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. Pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children, for instance, is not a political Gordian knot, inexorably binding up disparate claims about free speech, property rights, sexual liberation, and child welfare. It has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug or psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce it and distribute it should be in prison. Educated and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders, and telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate a spread should be shuttered. yeah, this is like very dangerous piece of supposed policy. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of black children. There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. Fatherlessness is one of the principal sources of American poverty, crime, mental illness, teen suicide, substance abuse, rejection of the church, and high school dropouts. So many other problems government programs are designed to solve but can't are ultimately problems created by the crisis of marriage and the family. The world has never seen a thriving, healthy, free, and prosperous society where most children grow up without their married parents. If current trends continue, we're heading toward social implosion. These people are fucking idiots. The Heritage Foundation is once again facilitating this work, but as our dozens of partners and hundreds of authors will attest, this book is the work of an entire conservative movement, such as the authors express consensus recommendations already forged, especially along four broad fronts that will decide America's future. Number one, restore the family as a centerpiece of American life and protect our children. Basically bring back the nuclear family. Number two, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Number three, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. Protect our borders. They want to get rid of the DHS. That's not going to protect our borders. And here's the most important one. Secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. Folks, we need to be very careful what happens within the next year with this. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who want to vote Republican, but I just got to say, vote Republican with your own, ideals. Me, I don't, I'm an independent now. I don't think I'm going to vote Republican because I don't want this thing coming into being. And if we vote Republican, it will come into being. So, y'all have a good night, and I'll keep digging the truth for you guys. Peace out.